Hi guys, welcome back to the Fight Podcast with
Sharir.
And with me, Jan. Hi Sharir, how are you?
Hey Jan, how you doing?
I asked you first. You tell me how you're doing.
I'm always good, you know that. Can't complain.
Is that so?
Oh, yeah, it is so. Why not?
You look good.
Well, I was born that way.
Oh, you did the thing.
You know, when I was born, I slapped the doctor.
You slapped the doctor?
I said, no one touches me. And then I was like, come on, Mom, I'll drive you home.
And you got a pizza?
Well, we stopped for a falafel on the way.
That's specific. So, guys, little change up. In the last episodes, we talked about one opponent. We talked about one source of danger. So this episode, we thought we'd switch it up. We need to talk about multiple attackers. This is something that is important in pretty much all of combat training, whether it be shooting, whether it be like just everyday casual civilian situation at a bar, whatever. This is something that is important and that makes combat training different from martial arts. In martial arts, you usually only have one opponent. So if talking about this whole scenario, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you talk about multiple attackers? Like, is it how would you fight them off? How would you prepare for it? How would you be aware? What do you deal with people who train with you when you talk about multiple attackers?
Well, first of all, it's important to understand that most fights, they're not a one-on-one situation, right? People have what's called like a pack mentality. Ever heard of that? Tribal mentality, pack mentality. It means they get their strength from the group. So if those kind of people, if he was by himself, he would probably do nothing. But they get their one at a time. They're even nice people. But if they come together as a group, they're a little bit problematic. So
I mean, they help each other up.
Yeah, they get their energy from the pack. And multiple opponents is a big problem, a challenge, and it's a common thing in violence. Multiple opponents, or a lynch mob, or so more people. It's something that has to be trained for and dealt with and talked about, because it happens a lot. So let's say even if you're a world-class wrestler, world-class grappler, you can't fight more than two people on the ground at once. More than one person, actually, on the ground at once. So we spoke about a couple of episodes ago, we spoke about what's the difference between a combat instructor and then a coach, like an MMA coach. So that's one of the main differences. Combat instructor has to find solutions for these sort of challenges as well. Knife attacks. The enemy's on some kind of drug, so he doesn't feel any pain, doesn't have any fear. Multiple opponents is another example that you have to deal with in the real world, so to speak. And you're not going to have to deal with as an MMA coach that crosses your mind at all. So you could be really good at boxing and clinch work, and your ground game could be amazing. But that still doesn't prepare you 100% for what might happen in the street. You might be jumped by 5 people. Of course, the more trained you are in full contact, or MMA, for example, the better off you'd be, because you're tougher guys to beat, and you can move your feet, your legs pretty quick. But if you don't know the principles behind it, you don't know what to do and what not to do, you might find yourself in a lot of trouble, especially if you think you're a badass because you train. So you don't know it's time to run, time to beat it, time to put your ego aside and get the hell out of there before it's too late.
Yeah, that's the trap, thinking because you can deal with one opponent that you can deal with multiple opponents. Also,
in the ring, in the cage, people look at your title and they give you respect. He has four wins and one loss, or he's top 5, he's top 10, he's a world champion. So people give you a title, and usually if you look at a lot of fights, there's a lot of kind of, in the beginning, there's a feeling out period where you're not really, defining their distance, giving each other some respect. Not all fights have that, but a lot do. In the street, you never have that. Especially not with multiple opponents. They give you no respect. Now, when a person doesn't give you respect, it's dangerous, right? He doesn't look at your title or your shoulders, He looks, he just takes out his knife and starts stabbing you. He doesn't give a shit who you are, And that could put you in a big problem.
So especially with situations where you, when it's in a cage, there's a competition going on. There's this idea of you show your craftsmanship with fighting, how you improved the way that you learned how to perform certain. It's like there's this certain set of not rules, but like tools you can use, and how well you can use them makes you the better or the lesser fighter. But the idea there is not to kill the other person. It's more or less to. There's this period where they test each other out to read the rhythm, especially with boxing, for instance.
Even sometimes a guy across the cage wants to take your head off your shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
He wants to knock you out. He's trying to kill you, maybe. Even then, you're still lacking in your training, as far as a knife, as far as multiple opponents.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody knows that I love MMA and wrestling and all that, and it's big part of ICCS. But that's not enough. It's not enough. It's not enough because you don't have the principles and the mindset of fighting multiple opponents, scenario training, situational awareness, knife, and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm. So you always assume, as with the knife, where you said, okay, there might be a knife involved all the time. With multiple opponents, you go a step further and say there's probably or most likely more people involved, right?
In many cases, yes. In many cases, yes, because a person is never going to start a fight thinking he's going to lose. So if he's a really big guy, he might, and you're kind of smaller, he might pick a fight with you. Especially if you look at the guy, he's not really big. So 2 options. I mean, he either has a weapon,
which is not good.
Or three options. He either has a weapon, or he's crazy, which is also turns him into a weapon, or he has friends around the corner.
Mm-hmm.
That happens a lot. When one guy comes, he tries to lure you in. It used to be common where people, like in New York, will play basketball, for example, and when a kid would come and start bothering you, like disturbing you, knocking into you, or whatever, and after a few minutes, you kind of get sick of it. The person would push him away, get the hell out of here, or give him a slap in the back of his head, and out of nowhere, 20, 30 grown men would come out. What you touching that kid for? And the whole thing starts, the whole fight.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a trick to lure you into a bigger problem. There was a security guard I used to teach this specific company, and one of the days there was a guy who was in his post, and a 12-year-old kid walked over to his post and started throwing rocks into his post, cursing at him, throwing rocks. So at the beginning, he was like inside his post, can I get, was yelling at the kid, get out of here. What can he really do? It's just a kid, stop, get out of here, whatever. After a few minutes, he gets a little upset. He came out of the post. He actually walked out, which is something you're not supposed to do. He walked out like to kind of push the kid away. And around the corner, there was about 30 men with baseball bats just waiting for him to walk out. And if he wasn't armed, and if he didn't act quick, he would have been dead that day. He did get injured, but he was okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another example of something that could happen is you see one guy, but the fact that you see one guy doesn't mean he's by himself.
Mm-hmm. And that goes back to the suspicious thing. If you have a hunch, if you have a bad feeling about something like this, just back off. There's no reason for your ego to be defended or for it to be damaged.
Yeah, the first thing you try to do with multiple opponents is de-escalate the situation, talk your way out of it, try not to fight, obviously.
Mm. Yeah, but also with one person, because it could turn into that situation.
Turn into that, or turn into a knife attack.
Mm-hmm.
Both situations are pretty bad.
Yeah. So I think with the idea of one person can also turn into a certain scenario where if you're so keen on this idea of I can take this one person and it can tilt at any time, it can just go to shit, and there's 5, 6, 7, 12 people involved in a situation, or just, as you said, 25 grown men protecting that one little dude. The issue with that is as well to have this awareness of the situation that surrounds you. So it's not about being able to fight or to fend off 12 men. The idea is to be able to not even get into that sort of situation.
Try to avoid it if you could, of course. You can't win like 2 or 3 people. It's not going to happen. You have to understand that's not. If you're by yourself, it's not about to happen. Mm-hmm. You have to try to minimize the damage and then try to get out of there as fast as you could. But unless you're something very, very special, beating more than 2 people, I mean, that's going to be a hard thing to do.
Mm-hmm. So you think in general this idea of being able to fend off multiple attackers should be revisited as something that is very...
Oh, there's so much bullshit when it comes to... I think I said last episode you have the knife, which is a lot of nonsense, people do, and then there's gun disarming because it's so sexy, people like that, even though they don't even have, most of them can't even shoot, Mm-hmm. And then another thing is you see all these scenarios where, they're fighting multiple opponents, so let's say I stand here and one stands to my right, one stands to my left, and my back is against the wall, so now I'm going to strike both of them at the same time in the windpipe and then kick one in the groin.
Gouge them in the eyes.
All you're doing is, man, you're choreographing a movie. So if you're making a movie, you want it to look good, sure, but that has nothing to do with what's about to happen in reality. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
how would you then approach the topic of multiple opponents? If you say, okay, there's no cool move to be learned, like do the Kung Fu Cobra and everything is good, what approach would you take to teaching people about multiple opponents? First of all, I work with
principles. Right, so I give the principles of what do you do and what you don't do when you're fighting multiple opponents. Mm-hmm. Okay, so for example, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to search for an exit. 2, 3, 4 people walk up to you. The first thing you do is search for an exit where you could get the hell out of there as fast as you could. Okay, so search for a door or search for a way out if you're outside in the street. That's the first thing. And then I'm starting to move towards that exit. Okay? And if there's no exit, second thing I search for is potential weapons. If you don't have any weapon on you, the second thing I search for is potential weapons. And I'm going to, if I can't circle towards an exit, I'm going to start to move my body towards that potential weapon. It could be, use your imagination. It could be a chair. It could be a stick you see somewhere.
A pipe or something,
A pipe, endless things you could use. I'm sorry, because it's about to go down and I'm about to get hurt and I need to minimize damage. I'm going to need to be very aggressive very, very quickly.
So the idea is, as with the knives, where you said that aggression can make up for the disadvantage you have because someone has a weapon. That's kind of like an equalizer, the aggression, but you could also have like an object that could be an equalizer where you say, okay...
Aggression always covers for the absence of technique.
Mm-hmm. And also with this situation where you have this advantage of multiple people against the maybe advantage of a weapon that you improvise, then it's about looking for...
Not really. I don't think it's going to help you too much. Mm-hmm. Again, depending on how many... If it's 2 people, it might, but 3, 4, 5, you're starting to be in trouble. Mm-hmm. But, just like we spoke about last episode, we got the knife. If your only option left is to fight, then fight hard. And that increases your chance of survival. Minimize the damage to yourself, maximize the damage to your enemy, but do the last thing he expects. Attack him, force him to defend himself, force him out of his comfort zone, and don't forget, if you're dead anyway, anything you do from that point on is a bonus. Mm-hmm. Same principles as knife. You remember those? Same idea. But again, the first thing I would try to do is circle towards an exit. Okay, no exit. Look for a weapon.
Mm-hmm.
No weapon and no exit. I start walking towards the person who I think is the weakest point in the group. Why? Because I don't want to get stuck on anybody. If I go straight for the biggest guy, you're going to get stuck on them for more than 1 second. They're going to attack you from all sides. I need to have the ability to move and strike really, really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to go to the weakest person where I can continue moving as fast as I could. Does that make sense? Things that you never do, or at least try never to do. Never go to the guy in the middle. Let's say there's 3 guys. One standing in the middle, then one to his right, one to his left. And I've seen a lot of cases where the specific problem started with the guy in the middle. Let's say you were working on a door or something, you kicked him out. He comes back with friends.
Mm-hmm.
He comes back with friends, it's very natural for him to stand in the middle. Then you see him coming again, you get all upset, you walk right up to him, you're walking into a trap. Don't take it personal. You no longer have a problem just with him. If he brought friends, you have a problem now with everybody. With all his friends and not just him. So, okay, if you walk into the middle, you're going to get stuck when the sides will attack you from both sides at the same time. You're going to get stuck. You're going to get taken down. You're going to get your head kicked in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I never go to the guy in the middle if you could avoid it. Next thing you never do is never walk backwards if you could avoid it too. Because if you're walking in a straight line back and they're moving in a straight line forward, you're just creating a funnel towards yourself. Eventually, they're going to all reach you at the same time. Right? Escaping in a straight line is never really a smart thing to do.
Even with one opponent.
Even one opponent, even with many scenarios, right? I mean, you against a knife. If you go, the guy with a knife, for example, he has tunnel vision, right? He sees you dead. That's all he sees. All he cares about. And then you moving backwards, he's just moving forward. But if you want to disconnect, let's say to get your gun or something like that, if you're cutting angles, he has to pick up his head and try to look for you again for half a second. Mm-hmm. That's a very long time in a fight, right? Going back to multiple opponents, if you're moving backwards and they as a group are moving forward, you're creating a funnel.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you can run away, so run away. That's why you're searching for the exit. But if you can't run away, you're about to prepare to fight. I'm not walking backwards. What you want to do is, like I said, circle towards where you think is going to be easier for you and you're not going to get stuck.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that I'm circling, walking sideways, I'm causing them to kind of bother each other, be in each other's way.
But this is again a principle. This is not like a technique like walk to the side.
Yeah, this is just practice, time on the mat.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we'll get into the actual training in a few minutes. We'll talk about that. But right now, just the idea behind it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's what not to do and then what to do. So what not to do, right? You don't go to the guy in the middle. You don't walk backwards. You try not to kick.
Because you might get
Because you're going to slip or you're going to get your leg caught and you're going to fall. Plus, you want to be on the move all the time, and kicking and moving is a very, very difficult thing to do. But punching and moving is relatively easy if you train your boxing. That's why we have so much, ICCS street boxing. We do all that all the time because, especially with multiple opponents, you need fast hands. Is all you basically have.
Okay. Would you say knees are a bad idea?
Knees sometimes can be okay.
Mm-hmm.
on the move when you just grab for a second.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying never kick. Or never knee.
But try to avoid it.
Try to move as fast. If you move it as much as you can, if you be trying to move, you see it for yourself. You're not going to be so successful with kicks no matter who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's all the list of what not to do. And then, like I said, the first thing I'm looking for is an exit. Why? I don't want to stay and fight more than one person because your chances of winning are very, very low.
And for all the BJJ guys out there, never go to the ground if there's multiple opponents.
Yeah. That's it goes without saying, I would think.
Yeah,
right?
I just wanted to throw that in there.
You think you're a world champion or whatever, and BJJ, okay, you could grapple one person at a time, right? So you go. I had a friend actually who was protecting this building. He's a tough guy. He's a BJJ black belt, and he's a very good, well-rounded fighter. I mean, he has great stand-up.
Mm-hmm.
He likes to fight too, so he's a real athlete, and he's a tough guy, right? Obviously, because he does all this full contact. But I used to tell him many times, listen, where you're working now, there's gonna be a bunch of people jumping you, so try not to go down to the ground. Try to keep it standing. Try to keep it moving, etc., etc. Sure enough, on a Friday night, the building is attacked. So what does my friend do? A double leg.
Was it like a club, or was it?
It was sort of like the building. You mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like a club, pretty much.
So it's like people partying and
okay, something like that. Well, sure enough, the place gets attacked by basically a mob of people. He comes out. I mean, he was by the door. He's a tough guy. A bunch of friends with him were all tough guys. And they start fighting back. What did he do? He went for a double leg on a guy. Perfect double leg. He picked him up. He smashed him down. Which would have been okay, but then he mounted him. Started ground and pound. So he's on the mount, and for about 7 seconds, he was punching the guy in the face. I'm sure the guy didn't get up so quickly, but one of his friends came from the side, kicked him in the head really, really hard. He had like steel toe shoes, one of those Timberlands or something. He broke 4 of his front teeth. I think he broke his jaw in like 2 places. I mean, he got real damage to his face from one big penalty kick, and then he was kicked again afterwards. He never saw it coming. When you don't see a strike coming, then it's the worst.
Mm-hmm.
Boom, out of nowhere.
That knocks you out, yeah.
Yeah, out of nowhere like that, big surprise. So, just example, the guy is really good, but you don't do that. You don't go down to the ground on more than one person. Now, if you go down to the ground, the only thing you can control is the guy in the ground, right? But you can't control what's going on around you. So that can be a big problem. Okay, that's why grappling has its limits, and one of the biggest limits it has is multiple opponents, and multiple opponents is a common thing in the street. Whether you like it or not, whether you admit it or not, it's the truth. It's just a fact. So you gotta be ready for that as well.
So just technique wise, I think the most effective thing for multiple opponents would be boxing, right?
Would be boxing. So what we do, as far as the technique, after people start understanding the principles, I usually do it in a couple of different stages.
Mm-hmm.
You don't do scenarios. That's a nonsense, because there's endless scenarios that you can be doing, and you just want to doing that. Just you're kind of living like you're making a movie for Hollywood. So you got to go hands on. You got to go hard. You got to do it real. The first drill I do is no contact drill. It's just to understand the leg work. That means I have groups of 3, 2 people against 1 person, and what the 2 people are trying to do basically is trying to catch him in between both of them, in the middle. And the third person is just trying to circle all the time to make basically keeping one in front of him all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So the first part of the technique is the understanding the leg work. That's why, multiple opponents in ICCS, I believe it's in level 4. Not because you can't do it before, but when you are level 4 in ICCS, the student is training for at least 5 to 6 years. So after that, he has leg work. He has boxing skills. So he understands how to move. Okay? That's important. So the first drill we'll do is just understanding the leg motion. So moving the legs. Once we got that down, we'll do the same drill, but the 2 people who are trying to catch you in the middle are holding tombstones, like big pads.
Mm-hmm. Like kick pads.
Kick pads, yeah. Mm-hmm. And then we do the same drill, but this time they try to catch you in the middle while they're holding the pads, and you could actually move and strike. So you're practicing how to move and strike at the same time, which slows you down a little bit at first. It's a very important part of the drill. Once we get that going, the third part is everybody puts on their boxing gloves, and we do the same drill, but they're actually hitting you and you're actually hitting them, but just to the body. So we're not trying to, because you go hard like that, you start creating knockouts really quickly.
Mm. So very light,
so,
like 10%.
Yeah, just to understand that, moving and hitting at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Once they're done with that, what I'll do is actually put helmets on, and I'm going to go, okay, now we're going to actually go for it. So 2 people are trying to smash you. and then you're trying to smash them back, and I keep it short, you know.
Helmets and vests?
Sometimes vests, sometimes no vests, but helmets all the time. And keep it short, so like, go get him, you know, and then you gotta move and hit, and you realize really quickly when you do a drill like that, when it's 100, when you go like full force, you realize really quickly that all you can have is your boxing skills. So, you know, fast punches, and you realize really quickly that you cannot be number 2, right? In many cases, like in the ring of sports, people like to be number 2. So the weight, the guy attacks, he counter. You can't counter-attack more than one person. Right? Think about that as well. So if your style is to counterattack, it's not the correct style for a street fight. You got to go forward. You got to be number 1 all the time. So any person in punching distance from you is going to get it on the spot. Right
because
away.
as long as you punch one person, you only have one other person to worry about.
You move and hit and keep them in front of each other. This drill, when we go full force, is about 10 seconds each time. Why? Because it's more realistic that way anyway. Because in more than 10 seconds, you're going to lose. You're hitting them so you can get to that exit. Okay? And the second is to prevent injuries. Because if you go more than too long with this drill, someone's going to get knocked out. So that's basically how I would build the whole aspect of multiple opponents. First, you speak about the principles. Like I said, what to do, what not to do, right? Afterwards, you start slowly, just the leg work. Afterwards, just the leg work with some striking on the kick pads. Afterwards, slow sparring, light sparring, just to understand a little bit more. Once they're good enough, let's do it full force over and over and over again, but short 10-second rounds. But over and over and over again, I mean, it gets really tiring. But that is a great drill. I do a multiple opponents drill, by the way, with my MMA fighters as well. When they're in a fight camp getting ready for a fight. Why? It just gets you aggressive, you know. It gets you like in the mood to fight.
Also gets you kind of used to being overwhelmed. So fighting one opponent is going to be more comfortable then.
It's not about the technique right there. It's just about, you know, the personality, the mindset, and the principles.
Yeah.
Now, the more you're skilled in striking, that should mean the more you're skilled with moving your legs fast and understanding distance and having fast hands, the easier the subject of multiple opponents is going to be to you. But if all you did is, you know, go to some Krav class and the instructor showed you, okay, let's do this. Let's play. Actually, that's what we're doing. Let's play this game. You're the good guy. Like kids do that. You know what I mean? And we're the bad guys. And you're on your knees. And I have a gun to your back. Dude, you're screwed. It's over. You know? Okay, let's do, okay, you're by the corner. And how do you know, and I'm this way and he's that way. Okay, I mean, come on. If you're in the corner, but if you've been in the corner so many times in sparring, you know how to shift, you know, your legs, your front leg, you know how to roll and shift or slip and shift, and you're out of there.
You're just not going to stay there, yeah.
You're not going to stay there, you know, exactly. And it's just a lot of bullshit.
Also, I think that a big issue with training this way is you're used to being in compromised situations, so maybe you're not even going to prevent them in a fight because, you know, from there, I know what to do. The big issue is with if someone tries to lift you. That's something that I've seen with a lot of Krav courses.
Yeah.
If someone knows what they're doing and they're trying to lift you,
smash you down.
Yeah, it's too late.
You can't give any ground.
Yeah.
You cannot give any ground. If you have to stay and fight, especially with multiple opponents, do yourself a favor and stay and actually fight. Losing is not an option. You cannot give an inch to anybody. That's another problem you'll have with jiu-jitsu, right? Jiu-jitsu, as great as it is, you know, it is a great tool, but it's not enough. And one of the problems, we could talk for hours about this, but one of the main problems is jiu-jitsu players are used to giving up a position willingly. Okay, you got top position, I got bottom position. You know, slap, clap, let's work. That's a very dangerous thing to do. Not only in MMA, right, but in a street fight, of course.
True.
It's not okay that you're on your back. You have to realize that it's not okay. You can't stay there and, you know, look for some submission or getting your position. You got to get up and you got to get the hell out as fast as you could. And one of the dangers of doing just grappling is that you have a bad habit of letting people get a dominant position or getting a top position, even though you think, okay, yeah, because I have a good half guard or a good guard or rubber guard, whatever. That's not going to work against more than one person. And it might not even work against one person if it's punching you in the face really hard.
Yeah, also it was weird the first time that I did an MMA sparring session, because I was used to grappling. The weird thing was I was in top position and then I could punch him. And the weird thing was the first time realizing, oh, this is not just limited to grappling. We're not just limited to this one thing. And with street fighting, that's a thing that you should always be aware of. Like even stuff like if you're close, bite someone, or these things where it's like you don't think about these things in a martial arts context.
You see that a lot.
If you're not Mike Tyson.
I see that a lot with guys who've done jiu-jitsu for some years, and they come to my school and they want to do MMA.
Mm-hmm.
I see that a lot when they're even when we're just grappling, so they get taken down or they sit on their butt, and then the guy just stands up again. They're like, "What are you doing?" Why stand? They're not used to that, and that puts them in a problem because there is no agreement with. There's no agreement about, okay, you got top, I got bottom. It's just I'm dominating no matter what all the time. That should be, that should be something important in MMA, of course, but mostly for survival. No matter what, I have the best position all the time. All the time I'm winning. I don't give you an inch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think that's the main concern for me if you train people to fight in the street versus to fight in a cage, because people in the street, if there's a conflict there, it's always going to be this beat down mentality. It's always going to be, there's no rules, and so even without weapons, even without multiple attackers, the issue is always, it's dirty fighting. There's no rules to it. There's no concept of, there's no agreement on these are the rules. You're not gonna destroy a joint if you have a lock or something, which you could say is kind of frowned upon in grappling if it's not a tournament. But all of these things, they don't count if it's a street fight. I think that's important, and that's how it's different. And this is how you need to be aware of the difference of competition and a scenario where you fight even a single opponent in the street.
You have to do both, of course.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to do grappling and to do wrestling as much as you can. It's going to help you more than you can imagine with a knife and in any scenario. But doing just that is not enough.
Mm-hmm.
It's not enough at all.
We've talked about the idea of not defending oneself but attacking the others. Now with multiple opponents, you kind of said, or let's clear up this misconception. If you take one of the MMA Jerusalem fighters, one of the fighters in your gym in Jerusalem, and you do these drills, how many opponents do they have to deal with usually?
With the multiple opponent drills?
Yeah.
2 or 3.
2 or 3, okay. How do they manage?
Well,
those are well-qualified fighters. How do they manage?
They get their ass kicked.
And that's I think the most
but
important.
They minimize the damage. You understand? They minimize the damage. That means because they're doing it for a while, they know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
But thinking you could beat 2 or 3 people just because you do MMA, you got a little bit of an ego problem. Not to mention weapons. Things are getting thrown at you. I'm not saying if you do Krav, you could beat more than one person. Quite the opposite. You can't. But if you do it correctly and you mix, that's why we call it, ICCS MMA for the street. If you mix your MMA skills with word development drills and with the right mentality, the right mindset, then you'll be able to minimize damage far more effectively than if you just do MMA.
Mm-hmm.
If you just do self-defense, whatever system, honestly, basically, you can't do anything. You can't strike, You can't grapple
with one
You
opponent.
can't do anything. Yeah, you're gonna get your ass handed to you on a silver platter. If you do full contact, I mean, you're dangerous 1-against-1. You know, sometimes 2-against-1, depending who you're fighting. You know, you're a tough guy. But if someone's really trying to kill you, and there's knives involved and crazy violence, yeah, you're lacking. It has to be a combination of both.
I think that's a weird effect that the entertainment industry kind of has on the view on violence that most people have, because you see these things like either these movies where there's like 50 ninjas and one of them attacks at a time, and it's like it's never like that. And also I've seen people, I think that's a Jack Reacher thing where they read the books and he's like, yeah, first I take out the leader of the group and then everyone else scatters. And all these things are, I think it's important to get this out of the zeitgeist of the people, that people don't feel like there's this much of a chance that they have a reality check with this. And especially with these people, I mean, I've sparred with one or two of those guys. Those fighters we were talking about, that's not just like entry-level fighters. Those are not just some dudes who kind of do MMA sometimes. Those are really qualified fighters. And if you say you put them with 2 or 3 guys, they get their ass handed to them, but they want to minimize the damage.
Yes, 2 or 3 tough guys, of course. Right?
Yeah. But then it's important to say, okay, or to get this correctly. Multiple opponents is not something where you just understand this one thing and then you can kick everybody's ass.
Time on the mat is experience. It's training over and over and over again.
And the more opponents, the less chance you stand.
This after 3 opponents, 4. I mean, you start to be in real trouble. It's a lynch mob. You know, you're about to get lynched.
Mm-hmm.
It is what it is. You know, and then there's another topic which is similar to that. Is getting attacked while driving in your car.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get lynched, and that happened in the U.S. Remember, it was last summer, or I don't remember anymore, but the riots in the summer, people were getting attacked in their cars, just because you're driving down the wrong neighborhood, and it happens in a lot of areas. In Israel, it can happen as well. Driving the wrong area, you're going to get attacked. I mean, it's tens of people with rocks.
Mm.
What you gonna do with your MMA? What you're planning on doing with your wrestling? But if you have situational awareness, and if you've done warrior development drills, you can keep your cool and work with principles and try to escape, try to get out of there. Try to what to do and what not to do to try to minimize the damage.
Mm-hmm.
Right? For example, with a car. If I could avoid stopping the car, I will never stop the car, because what they try to do is stop you on the tracks. Okay? Once you stop, then they jump on your car and they'll pull you out. Then you're in a big problem.
Mm-hmm.
But people have to realize a car could be used as a weapon. I mean, that's, I don't know how many kilos of metal. Right, so if you can't drive forward, drive backwards, drive side to side, but don't stop your car if you could avoid it. And there's many things. Maybe we could do another episode just on driving.
Just on driving, yeah. That would be interesting, because that's something where I'm completely new to. Driving defensively or offensively. Yeah, but I think also do you think with if there's a confrontation, just like outside of a club, as you said earlier, or it doesn't really matter what the situation is, as long as it's not just someone pops up and it's just a lynch mob, as you said, which is a very out there situation. But let's say like an everyday
lynch mob, for example. I will stop you for a second.
Mm-hmm.
You know how many times that happens in soccer games?
Yeah, that's yeah.
Okay, what do you think that's not a lynch mob? You wearing the wrong color shirt and the wrong side of the stadium, you're screwed.
Yeah.
In a lot of places. I mean, that's crazy violence.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good example for a lynch mob.
Yeah.
And what were you saying? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm not typically the kind of guy who goes to stadiums.
Neither am I.
Yeah, but that's not something that I would have thought of.
I was in the NBA, but that was years ago.
Are basketball fans, are they as violent as is there Lynch mob at those games?
Not really.
It's a more peaceful sport.
Yeah.
No, but that's a good point. Also with certain, it just depends. But with certain holidays, if there's parades and stuff, people are drunk, people are in the streets. I've noticed this happen as well. Like especially when you like certain parts of the city are just closed down because of New Year's, because of whatever it is, and people move around. They're drunk. Something just fires off, and then there's groups.
Look what happens in France. Sometimes, even this last World Series in soccer, one team wins, there's mobs outside. One team loses, there's mobs outside. No matter what, there's going to be a violence. People get together as a group and they start going crazy. And let's say you walk down that wrong neighborhood, you're just going home, you get attacked. It is what it is. So you get attacked, 20, 30 people. I mean, your jiu-jitsu is not about to help you, is it? what only thing that will help you is really situational awareness and understand, having a tactical mindset.
Getting out before.
Understanding exactly. And aggression.
And especially for the, let's take this idea of mobs, but now there's multiple groups involved. Like if you say, for instance, let's say New Year's, there's one group, there's another group, a fight breaks out, and just by chance you're there. I think then the whole situation changes because you're not the only target of this group escalation.
Get the hell out of there. It's none of your business. Just get out of there.
Just as much physical distance.
Just leave, yeah. And then that's a whole other topic, because that's a topic of what's called crowd passing. And there's techniques to pass a crowd faster. We teach that with first responders, because sometimes there'll be people running and you have to run through a crowd to get to the bad guy. You can't run around the crowd. Let's say you're standing and there's a crowd of 100 people in front of you and there's a bad guy in front of them shooting at them. So there's two options. One, people will say, okay, run around the crowd. And people say, run in the crowd. Which one do you think is faster?
Around, you might lose the guy as well.
You can't run around the crowd because the crowd moves all the time. There's no around the crowd. They're going to be moving and running all over the place. So the only way is the fastest way is between, in the crowd. So there's ways of doing it with your body position, with all that. But that's an interesting subject. For crowd passing.
For another episode, you mean? Perhaps.
Maybe half
little teaser.
Maybe.
But so the main idea is, if you're the main target of a mob situation, then you need to get out as fast as possible. If there's multiple people, great, there's more distraction for you to get out. That's the idea, right?
If there's multiple people who are getting attacked and you're part of the group that's getting attacked, either get out or help the group. But if it's none of your business, just leave. You know what I mean? Like you said, you don't like soccer. So whatever, just leave. But if there's cases where I've seen quite a few of them, that a car gets attacked by a Lynch mob and there's a family in the car. There's children, there's a wife. You can't just get out. It's that's a challenging situation to be put into.
Also, I think we should talk about one or two of... We already spoke about suspicious behavior, but especially for giveaways for a group being present or a group threat. And I think one of them would be this idea of the hidden connection you talked about.
Yes, 100%. Hidden connection could be because they're trying to lure you into an alley where they know you can't escape.
So worse in your position.
Into their neighborhood, into their area. Yeah. Hidden connection can also be, of course, for kidnapping, for mugging, and for rape. But hidden connection is a big indicator for multiple opponents, because for sure you have at least two. If there's hidden connection, right? For sure, at least two, maybe more.
So, and I think you said for hidden connection, you said if you recognize people linking this way, it's always trouble. It doesn't have to be directed your way. But if people know each other, but they act like they don't, there's always bad intent behind that.
It's not because they want to give balloons. Well, maybe they want to do. Maybe it could be a surprise birthday party.
Okay, but maybe you don't like surprise birthday parties. Okay, but the idea is always
it doesn't look good.
You just if you see it, it's trouble.
It's not good.
Okay, yeah. And that is something when you do these scenario trainings, when you train, you don't, or especially with multiple attackers, you don't focus on scenarios, right? You just go for the physical part. It's just the beatdown.
Right. We have scenario training, which I gave an example last episode with the knife.
Mm-hmm.
One of the scenarios could be, you come in with your friend, and you get attacked by 10 people. What do you do? And the scenario is exactly 12 seconds, and they say, okay, what happened? And we got attacked. There's a conversation, but that's usually I do that to teach people the right structure when you're more than one person. Let's say you're 2 against 10 or 5 against 15. How to stand as a group to help minimize damage and to maximize damage for them. But as far as multiple opponents, it's the principles which we spoke about in length before. I mean, what to do, what not to do, and afterwards the drills that I gave you before. Leg work, and then leg work with hitting the kick pads, and then light sparring, multiple opponents, and then full contact, which could be done with the warrior vests, and then we could also be done without. And then once you get to that level, you do that all the time, like 2-on-1 sparring. We do that quite often. 2-on-1 sparring is also a very good way to get your cardio up. It's tiring. You
have to move more, yeah.
Yeah. You can't just stay static. You got to be moving. So it's also a good way to get the leg work going.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you want to add something? Do you want to wrap this up?
I'm good. I mean,
you're good.
Yeah,
okay. Because I think this is the issue with this. There's no like. There's no easy way around this.
Train the right way, and don't think that your style is the only style and the best style.
And respect the opponent, which is also
and okay. So you do MMA, great, but that's great, and it's a big percentage of what you need, but it's not enough. So I would say mix between full contact, so boxing, wrestling, groundwork, but you have to have the warrior development drills, and you have to have the principles, the mindset, and you have to have that street smartness as well. It has to be mixed together. If not, you're lacking either way. So that's important to remember. I think that's a good wrap up.
Yeah, that's a good wrap up. Yeah. Sharir, thank you.
Thank you, Jan.
And talk to you guys next week.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.